Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is CM Alexander with the news. Gumshoes, private eyes, and sleuths rejoice as we celebrate DetectCon here at the Derry Civic Center. Sign up for informative panels such as Murder Scene Puns, One More Thing, A Guide to Questions, and The Sadder the Office, the Better the Dick. You're listening to Derry Public Radio. This is Derry Public Radio.
Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King book club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Kahn, alongside Benjamin Graham.
Hey, Gangster readers.
And joining us via Zoom, he is a Mystery Writers of America Grand Master and four-time winner of the Private Eye Writers of America Shamus Award. His graphic novel, Road to Perdition, became an Academy Award-winning Tom Hanks film. He has scripted the Dick Tracy comic strip, Batman, and his New York Times and USA Today bestsellers include Saving Private Ryan, American Gangster, and several CSI novels. Please welcome to the show, Max Allan Collins. Max, how are you?
Well, great. I feel, I'm very impressed with myself.
Honestly, I was about to start applauding.
Yeah, you've got a solid resume, my man.
Yeah, I recommend living a long time.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
It's I know we haven't even gotten into our questions, but I want to let our listeners know it's just very funny that you live like an hour away from us.
Not even that.
Like 45. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in Muscatine, Iowa.
Yeah.
And are you in Davenport?
We are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Davenport?
Yeah.
And my longtime business partner in doing indie films and various video and movie projects is Phil Dingledine, who's a well-known person in your part
Phil.
of the world.
Yeah.
Who runs D Films over in Rock Island.
Top of the line,
So,
D Films.
I think the Quad Cities is great. I mean, it's an incredible area and much underrated.
I have to say, in preparing for this interview, I was going through your oeuvre and seeing the frequency of the place I live mentioned is a little surreal because, of course, Road to Perdition is an amazing comic book. If you haven't read Road to Perdition, y'all, you need to. And starts out in Rock Island and plays into the story.
Mm-hmm.
And also, your character you created for DC, Wild Dog, canonically from the Quad Cities.
Are you serious?
He is the Quad Cities vigilante crime fighter.
That's news to me.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, guys. The really disconcerting thing about living in an area a long time and writing about the area a long time, putting it in your stuff, is I've had this kind of conversation so many times. When somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, I love your books. I love your stuff," and I'm like, "Well, God, that's wonderful. That's great. What do you like about it?" Well, they're all set in where I live.
Well, it's an added.
What about the stories? I knew that antique shop. I used to go by there on the way to school.
Oh, I love that you name dropped Whitey's.
Yeah, and that is absolutely the kind of compliment I get in this area.
I've been
you're
there.
writing about places I know.
It is neat to see as someone from the area that in a story that is also just beautifully written. Fantastic.
All right, Max, let's dive in. We got so much to talk to you about. Let's kick things off with the first question we always ask. What was your introduction to Stephen King?
My introduction to Stephen King, notice how I repeat the question.
You're a seasoned vet.
I've done this.
Yeah.
I've done this before. My wife's sister is named Cindy, and my wife and I won't say we raised her, but we were with her a lot from her birth on. And so when she was maybe 15 or 16, we were at their mom's house. And of course, when you're around a kid from birth, you never think of them as at their right age.
Yeah.
They're always just a kid. And I was waiting while they were doing whatever, and there was this book on the coffee table, Carrie. And it was, and this is before the movie.
Wow.
When it was.
So pretty new Carrie.
Yeah. And it was just a paperback. And I'm like, no, let me see what this little girl is reading. I started reading this book, and it was amazing, and it was great. And that probably remains my favorite Stephen King book.
Wow. Nice.
Even though it's not, I mean, he's done epic things like The Stand and so on. And it is an amazing piece of work. But just the shock of that, my 15, 16-year-old sister-in-law is reading this stuff about the shower and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the movie, and I got to skip a little bit of a step because my friend Terry Beatty, who was from this area, he doesn't live here now. He was the artist on Wild Dog. He was the artist on Ms. Tree, and we did a thing called Johnny Dynamite together. So he's good pal of mine, and we were huge Brian De Palma fans pre-Carrie. Anytime we could get to Phantom of the Paradise, we would drive 50, 60, 80 miles to see, because this was before, I mean, literally, this is 74 or something like that. So there's no home video.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would go to see that, and we had seen Sisters and so on. And then suddenly probably, what was it, his third movie, something like that, is Carrie, which, I resonated with quite a bit, and that still is, in my opinion, one of the best Stephen King movies.
Oh, absolutely.
The story's timeless. It's so tightly written. It's
Sissy
Spacek
is so eerie.
Oh gosh,
amazing.
Yeah, it actually almost has, which is unusual for him, it's almost a short story structure.
Yeah,
I mean, he could have done it as a novella. Although I've got a feeling he probably spills a novella on his way to the kitchen.
Absolutely.
But and the other thing I want to say about Stephen King, his importance is undeniable. I run into this with my defense of Mickey Spillane a lot of times, where people don't necessarily like Mickey's work, and I say yes, but at the point he came into popularity, paperbacks were nothing, and his first paperback reprint came out and sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands the first weekend, and it all changed. The whole paperback revolution happened, and the way you write about private eyes changed. Suddenly heroes could be anti-heroes and just kill the bad guy if they were in a bad mood, and sex and all this stuff. It all came from this one writer. And I will say to people, you cannot like his writing, but you cannot deny his importance.
Absolutely.
And here is the Stephen King parallel. There didn't used to be a horror section in the bookstore. When you write books that require the bookstores to put in a new section to accommodate your books and the imitators of your books, you seem to be doing something right in the storytelling vein.
Absolutely.
So that's my Stephen King pitch.
With all that, do you have a Stephen King moment that when you think of his stuff, it's this scene from this book or the scene from this movie that always jumps to your head?
Well, I don't think you can. I don't think you can beat the prom.
Yeah, the Black Prom is amazing.
Yeah, and then I found, and this is years later, but I really think that the clown, and the Shredder is
absolutely
pretty good too.
Yeah,
I admire his storytelling. I think probably my favorite story by him in recent years, and at the time it came out, I kind of resented him. Seriously, I had done a book called Ask Not, which is one of my Nathan Heller books, and it was about the Kennedy assassination. And I thought, well, I'm going to get a lot of attention. It was kind of I think it was the anniversary of the assassination. Then he brought that wonderful book out,
11/22/63.
Yeah. And I think they made a fantastic miniseries out of it. The thing about King is, even if there's the storytelling is so good that even if maybe it's not his best work, maybe he wrote it a little fast. I'm not saying he did, but maybe he wrote a little fast. The story always is something that a good filmmaker can run with, because the heart of it is he's that guy sitting around the campfire spinning that yarn. And I think he's our Charles Dickens. I really do.
That's what I say on the podcast all the time, is so many of his books feel like you are sitting down with the old guy sitting at an old branded gas station in the sticks.
Yeah.
And he's just telling you a story.
He's the guy. He's the caveman. Okay. He's the caveman sitting around the fire.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And all the women are sitting there, and all the men are getting out to go hunter gather and all that stuff. And come on, Steve. Okay. And then women, no. He's telling the story. Let him finish the story. He's telling a story, so he doesn't have. He's like me. He tells lies, elaborate lies, so he doesn't have to get a real job.
Teach me, please.
The last real job I had, was stacking groceries.
What year was that?
That would have been 66, 67.
Good Lord.
No, I did teach for 5 years, but I got in trouble saying this once. I got in trouble saying this more than once. But I kind of didn't consider it a real job because my heart wasn't in it. I was really kind of good at it because, as you can tell, I'm not shy. So I could go in and fill an hour, no problem. But I have such respect for teachers, that the teachers where it is their calling. I knew it was not my calling. My calling was to tell stories, to tell elaborate lies. Now, I have done some right in your neck of the woods, gentlemen. For 25 years, I taught at the Augustana Summer Writer Conference.
Yeah.
But that was a week, and I could share, the stuff that I've learned. I don't believe you can teach writing fiction, but I think you can share strategies, and you can, and so there's some mechanical things you can do. But King is somebody who demonstrates that you got to be a born storyteller.
Absolutely.
So where did the passion for writing, and specifically the love of mystery, evolve from?
Well, it was my mother's fault entirely. She read to me, God bless her, read to me every night before I went to bed. And I also was fascinated with comic books before I could read. The first thing I ever wrote with my little pencil was titled, and I know what the title is because my mother wrote it down because I couldn't write yet. Couldn't read. I couldn't write. But the first thing I did was the two zombie Superman versus each other.
God, that's such a good title.
And if you saw the dialogue balloons, it was just scribbles, because I couldn't write yet. I would have been 4 maybe, and that was from George Reeves on TV. But she read to me Tarzan, Edgar Rice Burroughs, the real deal, real Edgar Rice Burroughs, incredible writer. I would be shocked if Stephen King didn't grow up to some degree on Edgar Rice Burroughs.
It's John Carter of Mars, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Edgar Rice Burroughs. Right.
Yeah, John Carter of Mars, which is the other great thing, although I liked Carson of Venus quite a bit, which was the other science fiction thing he did. But Burroughs was an amazing writer. The technique he had that I still use, that I think is just, absolutely the keys to the kingdom, is to follow 2 story threads, and you have a chapter that leads up to the cliffhanger. Then you go to the other story thread, and make them wait all the way through that. But at the end of that chapter, you drop a cliffhanger too. So you're just pulled through the story. I loved comics. So my mom, and she would absolutely be called upon by social services. Anybody knew, but they didn't have that in those days.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the time when Frederick Wortham was writing Seduction of the Innocent and all the anti-comic book stuff was happening. EC Comics got blotted out, and one of my first memories is that story all through the house where Santa Claus is a mad serial killer.
The kid letting him in at the end.
What?
Is so scary.
It obviously didn't have any effect on me at all. and that's one of my earliest memories, literally. So my mom said to me, well, you kind of like Sherlock Holmes, don't you? Yeah, I did like Sherlock Holmes. I was probably 6, 7 years old. And she said, well, when I was in San Diego, while your dad was in the service, I followed Dick Tracy in the comic pages. And I think you'd really like Dick Tracy. So I started buying the Dick Tracy comic book. And let me tell you, that Chester Gould stuff, that was so violent. So incredible.
Really?
Oh, bullets flying through heads and twirling.
What? Yeah. Before the comics code existed,
violent.
Comics were nuts.
Comics were lawless.
It was there. And this is something that I think that Stephen King would get this. They were putting the Tracy comics, in comic book form, and then they'd stop it at a cliffhanger. I learned something about power of storytelling from that. And then the next one I read was that little book that was published that my aunt bought me. I had a lot of relatives try to corrupt me with a good amount of success. And this was Dick Tracy Meets the Brow. I feel like I learned so much from Chet in those stories about storytelling, the power of tragic melodrama, care about people and sometimes lose them, not always. Just sometimes.
There's something so powerful about the first thing as a kid where you discover, like, the characters I'm growing to love can be in real danger.
Yeah.
Like, that is such a terrifying thing to learn as a child, and it kind of sticks with you.
It was the horse from Neverending Story for me. That's what taught me about characters I love dying.
Oh, yeah. Well, never kill a pet, too.
Also that.
Tell that to Stephen King.
Actually, Max, so you've written so many different mysteries, and I feel like the quality of a mystery novel is a lot about the mystery too. How, having written so many mystery novels, how do you keep discovering a fresh mystery? How do you keep mysteries interesting for you?
Well, I think for me, I have to start at the ending, and that is actually that's a Spillane technique, although I didn't know that. It's something I kind of stumbled onto. What happened in a very early book of mine, the second book I wrote, it wasn't the second book that got published. It got published probably in the 4th or 5th lineup of my stuff. But it's a book called No Cure for Death. And I started out with this philosophy. Well, if I don't know what's going to happen next, and if I don't know who did it in the mystery, the reader won't. Which sounds kind of logical. And then I get to the end of the book and I spend 2 long exposition little chapters where I figured out a way for somebody to be the bad, And that's when I said, no, that's not how you do it. You need to know who did it and why. And I do think that a mystery, the best mysteries are about something. They're about character. It could be as simple as, like in the Nero Wolfe books by Rex Stout, they're a lot of times they're not about anything except the relationship between Nero Wolfe and Archie Goodwin. But it's such an exquisitely portrayed, humorous, touching relationship that you like to watch just what impact the story has on them. Then there are other ones where you're really making point. But I'm not a writer who writes a novel to tell you what I think. I write a novel to find out what I think.
Oh, that's fascinating.
If I want to tell you what I think, I'll write an essay. I'll write my blog, right? But I want to set something up and explore things. So that's kind of how and I've run into things lately. Like I have a book out right now called The Big Bundle that's from Hard Case Crime. You see how I worked that around?
Yeah. I'm currently reading that. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm about to spoil some of it for you.
God.
Not a lot. But when I picked this crime out, because those books are all about a true crime that I set up as a private eye story, and it's a kidnapping, and the kid who's kidnapped, who's really not a character in the book, is the same age as my grandson, 8 years old. That was a resonance that I really had to think about whether I wanted to go there, because that tragedy would that hit a little bit too close to home. On the other hand, it sure did engage me, and if I'm engaged, there's a pretty good chance the reader's going to be engaged, and if I'm not engaged, there's no chance the reader's going to be.
I mean, if we're going to be a little spoilery about that book, I do really appreciate that Nathan Heller, like very early on, he's like, I don't know, guys. Like, does any of this sound right to you? Like, but he is very much like, I'll let people think what they want to think. I know what's happening. I have the idea. But I like that you have that from the very beginning. You get that, like, he sees through all of this stuff, but he is emotionally intelligent enough to be like, that information belongs to me right now.
Well, I'm very proud of Nathan Heller as a character. The first book was called True Detective. Nothing to do with the TV show. They stole that from me, much as Barry was stolen from Quarry. I'm not bitter. Heller is a guy who, at the beginning of the series, is in an office above a blind pig, which is a speakeasy, and he's sleeping on a Murphy bed, right? And by the time you get to where you are in the series, he's got a coast-to-coast detective agency.
Yeah, talking about his agencies and opening a third agency.
And he's had articles about him in Life magazine. And so it's been very gradual. And so I always age him with the times. Because you have to make that choice when you do a serious character. Are they going to be that's just who they are, and they're always going to be there? They're vaguely in their 30s, vaguely in their 40s. Or are you going to say, okay, this is a real life? Now, when I was starting this, I started the book in 81 and it was published in 83. Mystery writers weren't doing that much in terms of, private eyes never got married, hardly ever. They didn't have kids. I had this notion that I wanted to do something that was at once genre, that looked at, and I kind of hate the word tropes, but that did recognize the cliches and the tropes. But I also wanted to look at, well, there were real private eyes in that era, much more than there are, and fairly traditional private eyes. Let's examine how those tropes came to be, and let's have him also not be, as much as I love Philip Marlowe. Philip Marlowe had the rules that Chandler gave him, which was like he would never despoil a virgin, he would never take a bribe. Well, I think there were 7 or 8 of these rules. I had them on my desk, and I checked them off as I
I love that.
That's amazing.
I really, really did, because I wanted him to be more real than that.
Yeah.
So when Frank Nitti, Al Capone's successor, calls him in and says, "You're getting too close to this. Quit the case. Here's $100." Heller goes, "Okay," and he goes out and he buys himself a new suit.
That's
amazing. That's great.
I pulled him back into the case.
Yeah.
But he basically says, when Frank Nitti says, "Quit the case," and you live in Chicago, you're going to be dead in a ditch.
Yeah.
If you don't quit the case. But, oh, no, these private eyes, they're noble in their knights. That's total bullshit.
That's so great.
And that, to some degree, that comes from Mike Hammer. He was the first private eye who acted out of emotion. He hardly ever has a client. Somebody has killed his friend. Somebody has done something bad to a friend of his, and he's going to serve up rough justice. And when it gets to the end of the story, he's liable to just pull his gun and shoot the guy. That had not been done. And that, again, that goes up to my childhood. I was reading Spillane at 12. So I had to lie about my age to buy those books. And I don't know if I have any respect for anybody who didn't lie about their age to buy a book.
So I wanted to go back to when you're telling a serialized story, following a character for years and years, there's a pitfall. So many things that I love fall into that. It becomes repetitive. They don't give the characters the growth that you are mentioning. And in the sake of continuing to tell the story forever, I wanted to ask how you feel about giving your characters an ending in your serialized storytelling. When do you say this is, when do you give it the throw Sherlock off the waterfall book?
I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to lead up to it with Heller in particular. There's two reasons why I don't think I fall into the repetitive trap.
Mm-hmm.
One is I'm aging him as the years go by.
Helps, yeah.
And then the other thing is that he's reacting to the times.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the third book was called The $1 Million Wound. Heller goes to war. He's a Marine, is in Guadalcanal, and he actually comes home on a Section 8.
Mm.
And he's very messed up by the war. Okay, so one of the things you do, let's say I'm going to do a Heller short story, and I look at the year of the crime I'm going to do. It's like before or after the war.
Those are very different characters.
He's a different character. And then as he gets wealthy and he gets a little, and he's famous, he's the private eye to the stars. And he has a woman that he falls in love with. And he has a son. So all of these things give him colors that I don't think there's another private eye like him in the history of private eye fiction. There's some that have wives. I mean, that's changed a little bit in recent years. But the whole thing about Heller was that when I trained to be a private eye writer, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I specifically said I'm going to join that list that has Dashiell Hammett, Raymond Chandler, and Mickey Spillane and Rex Stout. I'm going to get on that friggin' list.
Succeeded.
And you did it.
But about the time that I was graduating from the University of Iowa Writers Workshop, he dropped that name, Private Eye was dead in the marketplace and was really played out. And it had been played out before. When Mickey created Mike Hammer, the Private Eye had become very much a parody thing on the radio. The Sam Spade on the radio was not the Sam Spade of the Maltese Falcon. It was jokey. And so, I wanted to do him. I wanted to do him more, more real. And I thought, well, it really came from the Maltese Falcon. Let me back that up. And I've told this story a lot, and I apologize if you've heard it. But I was teaching at Muscatine Community College, and to stay sane, I did a course on mystery fiction, totally for me, not for them. And so looking at the Maltese Falcon, which is maybe the great American novel, period. It's certainly the great American tough mystery. And I just was, looking at the indicia page, and as comic book people will know what indicia page is, whereas actual human beings don't. But the indicia page said, copyright 1929. And I went, 1929, that's the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Oh, that means Sam Spade and Al Capone were contemporaries. That's the light bulb moment.
Cool.
Where I go, okay, I can have Philip Marlowe, instead of Philip Marlowe meeting an Al Capone type, Al Capone can meet a Philip Marlowe type. So I spun it.
Nice.
And then the next thing was, well, if I'm going to be in history, history's littered with unsolved mysteries and improperly and controversially solved mysteries. Mm-hmm. So after I did 3 books about Chicago and the outfit and Frank Nitti, I did Dillinger and I did that stuff too. Then I thought, okay, let's do like Lindbergh, which is, and so then I start doing these famous cases, and sometimes they're mysteries, sometimes they're not crimes, sometimes it's I do the Roswell incident in a book called Magic Man, I do the Black Dahlia in Angel in Black. Another one that's not that's not really a crime is Amelia Earhart. We find out what happened to Amelia Earhart. And you got to be crafty to figure out how to do that as a private eye story. But that's the other reason why the books aren't alike. Because what does Amelia Earhart have in common with the Roswell incident except aircraft? Okay? Otherwise, so that means the trappings are different. Mm-hmm. When I read Rick Stout, as much as I love Rick Stout, it's all one story.
Yep.
It's all his businessman, and I mean, he's such a delightful writer. I don't care, but I don't want to do that. I mean, Robert B. Parker was very influential and very important, but he just kept writing the same book over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah. Now, Stephen King, while he has something, I mean, you could say, Steve, let's not do any more haunted car stories.
Oh, but those are my favorite.
But generally speaking, he does not do the same story twice.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's digging into his brain and his psyche and the things that are around him, because he's a combination of, the crazy abstract and the very concrete. And he sells the abstract through the concrete. I think the parallel with me is a little different, because what I try to do is, particularly outside of Heller, I like to do a story where the story itself is crazy. It's a melodrama, but the surface is real. So you go into that. So if the people are, Nate Heller farts, for example.
Uncommon for narrative characters.
I'll tell you, it was uncommon in the early 80s when I was doing it.
Sure.
I do think it's changed a little bit. I do think people have I don't think it was my influence, because I don't think any of those guys read me. But I do think times changed a little bit, more than a little bit. And I think that's good for the genre. I mean, the genre has to breathe, has to seem real. Because Sam Spade and Philip Marlowe, there were guys like that, but there aren't now. So when you see some of these writers who have big reputations that are still just kind of doing Philip Marlowe, I go like, well, guys, I mean, times have moved on.
Now, I want to ask you about, you mentioned your hard case crime novels earlier.
Yeah.
We've read a few hard case crime novels because of Stephen King's books. And you have several of your...
I'm writing my
you have several.
He says, "Well, God, look how Collins is selling." I'm bringing
you
one
tell
of my books out.
If we ever get to interview him, we'll tell him to stay in his lane.
Yeah.
God bless him. Actually, God bless him. He's kept that line alive.
Can you tell us how that relationship with hard case crime happened?
Well, I think that honestly, he's a mystery fan. He and I share a mentor, which is Don Lee Westlake, who wrote as Richard Stark, and a
name we know.
Yeah.
Richard Stark that's one of his favorite writers, and so that's a commonality. So the idea that he is somebody that does appreciate that kind of story, and then I don't really know the inside story, but my guess is he probably got in touch with
how did you get involved with hard case crime?
That's easy.
I don't need you to tell me about him.
Yeah, who cares about Stephen King? We're not here to talk about him.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting, because I think, oddly, he has a freedom. You would think he could write anything he wanted. But I think he has a freedom to say, I don't have to talk to anybody. All I have to do is tell our guy I've got another book, and he'll go, yeah. The Haunted Shoe, perfect.
Sure.
But he gets to do, and he doesn't have to do horror. He can do crime. He can do tough crime, and he can break a lot of rules that he feels like breaking. So I think that's part of it. For me, it was that they contacted me, and they being basically Charles Ardai, said, we're starting this retro line. We're going to do these covers that are harken back to the covers from the 50s and 60s. and we'd like to reprint your book, Blood Money. We're doing, and he told me what the other books were, and they were, I don't remember what they were, but they were by basically dead authors. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, Blood Money's the second book. Why don't you take the first book and the second book, and they're really intertwined, and just publish one book. It's one book, and you pay me the same advance. You give you a book free, and it's, oh, okay, let's do that. So he did that. Then they actually put one of the worst covers on it.
Oh no!
Oh no!
That was a disappointment. And of course, I don't keep quiet about stuff like that. So.
Why should you? It's your work,
right?
He called me, and I think he just said, well, he wanted to do another reprint, because I have a pretty big backlist. And I said, I would rather write a new book for you.
Nice.
Pay me the same amount you would for a reprint. And that's the Stephen King thing. I can go there and do what I want to do. And so it came about that I'd done the Quarry series in the mid 70s, and it had a cult following. And I wanted to do one last, and you talked about this finishing the series. I wanted to finish the series off. So I pitched The Last Quarry. And I said, but I have one proviso. You yourself, and he wrote some books for himself. You got Robert McGinnis for your cover. I want Robert McGinnis.
Nice.
Okay. And so he said, done. And so I got, and it's on the wall over here. Nice. Robert McGinnis did the cover for The Last Quarry. I went about my business, and then shockingly, the book got noticed. Entertainment Weekly, who were a big deal at that time, gave me a rave review and compared me to Chandler. Amazing. And then it sold fairly well. So I was at a BoucherCon, the big mystery convention, and I think in a food line waiting to get food with Charles. And Charles turned to me and said, it's really too bad that you ended the series. And I said, yeah, I did write The Last Quarry. How would you like to publish the first Quarry? So I wrote a book about his first gig.
Nice.
And then we've done something like a dozen since.
Awesome.
And they fill in the blanks. So if I had been writing them all these years, this is all the books I would have written.
That's so cool.
And 80s. And then I did this book that was just nominated for the Edgar and lost, but it got nominated.
Getting nominated counts.
Yeah. Quarry's Blood. And I decided, this gets right back to your question. I decided I've kind of aged Quarry like I've aged Heller. I'm going to make him 70 years old in this book. I'm going to basically make him my age.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
And so a woman shows up at the house. Now I'll give you the big spoiler. It's his daughter.
Nice.
And she's the daughter of some woman that he banged in one of the earlier books. and so I now have, and I reveal that he's been writing these books all these years.
Nice.
Oh, that's great.
Cool.
I love that.
That's amazing.
And also I reveal that he's a totally unreliable narrator. If you've been paying attention, you'd already know.
That's hilarious.
So that was designed to be the last book. And it was, I saw it basically as a coda, because I'd already done The Last Quarry. That really was intended to be the last book.
I love that, because that's the last of his books. That's the last book in his
That's
series.
the last book he wrote.
That's so cool.
But now I have to tell you, I'm preparing to write a coda to the coda.
Oh, there you go.
But it's a coda and two pair of pants. This is two pair of pants and two coda.
I want to shift gears to something else you write. That we actually did an entire bonus episode of our show talking about the novelizations of movies. And you have written several novelizations of movies. How did that start?
I made a living at it. I mean, basically a good share of my living at it. I was probably, I'm trying to think of a modest way to say this, but I probably was the top novelization guy for 10 or 12 years.
I mean, seeing how many you did, yeah, I get that.
And I was very lucky because I got some really important things like Saving Private Ryan, U-571, Air Force One. I mean, they came to me, I think maybe because they viewed me as a novelist. But what happened was the beginning of the story is I did the Dick Tracy novelization. In 1990, I still was writing the Dick Tracy strip, and I had angled to get the novelization of the movie because I didn't want anybody else writing it, because I had a proprietary attitude.
Yeah, it's your boy.
And so the script rolls in, and I thought it was terrible.
It's not a good movie.
I had seen the script about 5 years before, and thought it was terrible. And then when this all came, I said, "Well, they've got a different script by now. They couldn't be going with that script. It was the same."
Oh no!
So
explains
I
a lot.
Yeah, it does.
I called my agent and said, "What do I do about this?" And he said, and he was not experienced with novelizations at all. He's a great agent, but he never sold them before. He said, "Oh, they're not going to pay any attention. Just do whatever you want." And so I fixed it. I completely fixed it. And like if I didn't like the death trap, I did a different death trap. If I thought there should be some more villains, I did some more. Anyway, and they came back to me and said, "We got about 3 chapters in. Try again."
Oh no!
And by the way, you have 2 weeks. And we were packed to leave to go to Nassau on a business work trip, because I had to research a Nate Heller book in Nassau. So I'm typing on the plane. I'm typing in the hotel room.
Oh my God!
And I'm novelizing the screenplay, but I'm also putting in anything. I just said to them, "Well, screenplay is 100 pages. I'm contracted to deliver 300 pages. That means I got to come up with 200 pages, because I'm a math genius." So anyway, I put all kinds of stuff in that wasn't in the movie, Feynman Flinthard and stuff. And then the book came out really pretty good till we got to the end of the book. And if you saw that movie, and I don't care if you did, but the villain called the Blank turns out to be Breathless Mahoney, which was played by Madonna, and which is something I think you could have figured out in the credits. And they thought they had in Warren Beatty land, they thought they had the most surprise ending in the world. And so okay, so then they call me and say, "You can't reveal it, that the Blank is Mahoney." So I said, "Let me." So it's a mystery novel. It's a mystery novel, but I can't reveal who did it. That's right.
Insane.
I know. And then I kept trying to get around him. I was like, the Blank says something like at the end, "I love you," the Blank said breathlessly. No, didn't get one with it.
That's so funny.
So how does the novel end?
Well, it doesn't end.
It ends with Dick Tracy wondered who did it. The end.
And so at any rate, we sold something like 800,000 copies.
That's amazing.
So cool.
I'm nobody ever wrote a mystery novel that sold to that degree that had no ending.
Now that should be on your credits. Like that should be the little sub head of.
I did bargain with them, and the bargain was, I said, "Okay, any printings that happen after the movie comes out, you restore my ending."
Nice.
And so I think it's the 6th printing, which was mostly sold to Scholastic Book Club. So you can find it. So the collectible is not the one that has no ending. The collectible is the one that has the ending.
Interesting.
But bottom line is, I sold 800,000 copies of the novelization. So when they fired me off Dick Tracy, which is a whole nother story.
Oh no.
In 1992, 93, I went to my agent and said, I had a best-selling novelization. So go out to all the novelization editors and tell them I'm available. And it was like crickets for a while. And then I got a call from my agent saying good news and bad news. Good news is they want you to do the novelization of the new Clint Eastwood movie. Now, Clint Eastwood's last movie had been The Unforgiven, which had sold, which had
So
won
good.
every Academy Award that wasn't nailed down. And so I said, that's fabulous. Here's the bad news. They need it in 8 days.
Oh my God.
This was 2 days before I was to leave for the San Diego Comic-Con, where I was playing, my band Seduction of the Innocent was playing. And
That
so
rules.
That's amazing.
it was crazy. So my wife and I, my wife Barb, who's just amazing, I burrowed in, and I just did it. I just did it. But there was no internet to check. And so I would be something like, and it was going all around the country to different political stops. So this chapter would be Cleveland, and this chapter would be, I don't know, Des Moines, and this chapter would be Dallas. And I'd send my wife to the library to look up Dallas. And
God.
Wow.
Give me some color.
Wild.
And so we did it. And the book was, the book did extremely well. And then the word got around like, this crazy SOB wrote this book.
What was that book?
In the Line of Fire.
In the Line of Fire.
And the other thing that was remarkable about, what is that guy's name? Gary. I can't think of it, but he's a big actor.
Gary Sinise?
No, it's somebody on that level.
Gary Oldman?
No, it's not that.
I'm gonna name all the Garys.
Gary from SpongeBob.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But he read it, and we listened to it in the car. And as the book goes along, the level of obscenity just keeps building and building, because the level and the character was like kind of the lead character was getting more and more frayed, and which was good. It was good characterization, but it was basically just me having a nervous breakdown on the page. and so then I began to get the novelizations, and I was very lucky because most of them were pretty cool. And if they weren't like, Academy Award winning things, it'd be like I did 3 Mummy novels. And those were great to do.
My favorite one.
Oh my God. I'm so excited that when I saw The Mummy on your credits, I don't know, it made me so happy. I love that movie so much.
Well, they were a lot of fun to do. I did Scorpion King, which was the spinoff. I did Waterworld.
Yeah.
That rules.
Hold on. Let's just pump the brakes at
so
Waterworld. What is it like? Like, is the different experience doing something like The Mummy or Waterworld, and then did American Gangster and Saving Private Ryan, the things that are in your wheelhouse versus these insane movies? Like, is that?
Well, the thing you have to do for me, when I say you, I only mean you. I always had to have a window into the material.
Mm-hmm.
So when I looked at The Mummy, I said, this is 2 things. This is Indiana Jones and Universal Horror.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like Indiana Jones and I like Universal Horror. Let's have a good time. And that's just what I did. And when I read The Scorpion King, I went, whoa, this is a piece of shit. But I thought about Edgar Rice Burroughs. I said, this could be an Edgar Rice Burroughs novel.
In a major
way.
way.
I'll write my Edgar Rice Burroughs novel.
Give it kind of a Conan flair.
The thing I'm proudest of, and I think that I had for a while, I had kind of a reputation for this novel, but I got a script. I don't know what it was. And my agent called me and said, what do you think? I said, this blows. I don't want to do it. So I got another one, and it was something else. And I said, I don't want to do this one. I'm tired of doing these terrible ones. Give me something good. The third one came in, and it was what is it called? Dead. It's the Tunnel movie. The Tunnel movie with Sylvester Stallone. It's a disaster movie.
I have no idea.
I don't think I've seen it.
I've not a huge Stallone head.
But at any rate, this comes in. And I didn't like it at all. And I told my agent, I said, this is nonsense. And he said, and I said, I can turn this down, right? He said, yeah, you can turn it down. That's the 3rd one in a row. You're never going to get offered one again. So I said, well, I can see some merit in it. And so I got this idea and I didn't ask permission, which was really dangerous. But I thought, okay, it's a disaster movie. I'm going to pretend that I'm doing a documentary and I'm interviewing the survivors. And every survivor, so I've got 6 survivors set up who are going to alternate chapters. And then I can be different places. I can see different things. And I'm not going to do this alone. I'm going to pretend that maybe somebody's picked this up and has not seen the movie yet. I'm not going to have him be a
One
point
of the
view
main
character.
character. That's fascinating.
Wild.
This is all first person.
You wrote a novelization that takes place just in the universe.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. Max, if we ever do a bonus show where we cover one of your novelizations of a movie, will you come back and talk to us about it? Sweet.
Absolutely.
Ben, we have a show.
And the one I really loved doing, which actually was not as good a script as it should have been because it was by William Goldman, who was a genius. But I think that was a paycheck script. He did the script of Maverick. And I grew up, Maverick was my favorite TV show as a kid. James Garner and Jack Kelly. I loved that show. And when I got that, I was delighted. And then the script wasn't quite anything wonderful. It wasn't terrible. And so, again, I said, I'm going to do this in the first person because Maverick's in every scene. And they used to do a voiceover in a lot of the episodes. So, and then I went through referencing every episode I could reference. Total fanboy. And just absolutely having, and then I took the theme song and I took phrases out of the theme song and I planted the whole theme song
insane
in the novel. Because see, if I had a window into the material, then I owned the material. The material didn't own me. And then if it's something like American Gangster, I just write it, that's straightforward.
Yeah,
that's your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Ben, do you have any novelization questions before we move on?
I am so fascinated. Like we said, I pitched to Josh and CM a whole podcast where we do book club style discussions exclusively of movie novelizations. So I think this is.
Some are very good.
I love the idea. So mostly you've said they give you the script to write off of, obviously. How far after writing these novelizations do you actually get to see the movie? And how does that affect how you feel about your books?
The best you can hope for is some stills from the set.
Wow.
Oh.
And sometimes you got that. A lot of times you got zip. The most I ever got was they had done some prep for, it might have been Scorpion King, but they did some prep to show places like McDonald's to say, look you should make a Happy Meal out of this movie. They had about a 7-minute sizzle reel.
Sure.
And that's really great because then you can see, even if it's snippets, you go, okay, that's the cave, and
you get details.
You won't believe what I'm about to say. The best experience I ever had, the most incredible cooperation I ever had, was when they did the second X-Files book movie.
Awesome.
Really?
And they had a reputation for being just terrible with writers. And I was dealing directly with the co-author. Forget his name. That's terrible. He's a big shot, huge. And he was always accessible by phone. He was sending me all this stuff behind the scenes. And they were keeping the script under lock and key. And even, I believe, the 2 lead actors only had the pages with their lines on it.
Oh, wow.
And I was one of, I think, 4 people in the country that had the entire script.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I loved the X-Files. I had tried out, to do original X-Files novels. And this is right at the end of the cycle, right? Where that movie didn't do too well, but I loved doing it. I mean, it just was like, I got to be, that's a sandbox I really wanted to play in.
Oh, absolutely.
We're running short on time, so I
Sure.
want to make sure we get everything in. But I understand that you have an additional King connection. I'm very excited about it in regards to your book, The Best of Crime and Detective TV.
The last time I had any contact directly with Stephen King, which is a disappointment to me, since you'd think we'd be in the hard case crime locker room,
Yeah, best buds.
But we're not. But I had some contact with him when a guy named John Javna invited me. He's the guy that does all the toilet humor books, which
yes,
books that you have in your toilet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yep.
If you don't have Moby Dick, you've got one of those books. And we did, I think, a really good book called The Best of Crime and Detective TV. And we sent a questionnaire out to top mystery writers, and we brought a few people in. And one of the people we brought in was Stephen King, who I believe wrote about The Fugitive, because he loved The Fugitive.
Mm-hmm.
And he was gracious. He did a good job. I didn't have a lot of personal contact with him, but my memory is that he was very pleasant. And then when the book came out, on the cover, they said it included these writers, and one of the writers was Steve King.
Oh no!
Steve King.
So close.
So I got this feeling, and I got this feeling that he thinks. I mean, I don't know what he thinks, but if I come up, I would imagine it's not pretty.
So, Mr. King, if you're listening, Max is sorry. Please,
I had nothing to do with it. I had nothing to do with it.
Please be nice to him in the hard case locker room.
Yeah, nobody dump any buckets of pig's blood on anyone else at the hard case prom.
Oh, you don't want to go to the hard case prom? No. There's goat's blood involved.
So, Max, let's get to the reason that I reached out to you in the first place. We've had such a good time talking that
I have no
time has
idea
flown.
why you reached out to me.
It's because of your new project. You're working on an Indiegogo campaign right now to raise funds for a new project, Blue Christmas, which is based on your mystery story, A Wreath for Marley. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about the story and about the project?
Well, it kind of comes back around full circle to what we talked about earlier. It's a combination of The Maltese Falcon and A Christmas Carol. The basic premise is that this tough detective in Chicago in the 40s, his partner, Jake Marley, was murdered a year ago. And Marley comes, and he's our hero is not much of a hero. It opens with him being delighted that he was able to bribe the guys on the draft board and not have to go to service during the war. So he's a stinker.
Mm.
And so Marley's ghost comes back, and it's like, I'm in limbo because you're a private detective and you haven't even bothered to solve the partner's murder. And so he's visited by three more ghosts.
That's so cool.
One of them is Bonnie Parker of Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh.
And another one is a dead serviceman who is his secretary's brother, and that's the guilt trip guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's the Ghost of Christmas Future. Now remember, this is 1941, 42. Ghost of Christmas Future is the king, who is actually Elvis Presley, and so he has no friggin' idea who Elvis Presley.
That's amazing.
That's so good.
So what? And so that's a story. I think it's one of my best stories. I literally, I got fired by this nincompoop editor at the Tribune. He not the guy that hired me, because editors, they come in and they got to get rid of the people that the last guy liked.
Sure.
I was one of those guys, and so we got the letter on Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving, and Christmas Eve. So it was a little dark holiday season for us. And Christmas Eve, I sat down and I wrote a 50-page short story novella, which was A Wreath for Marley.
Amazing.
one sitting.
Poured out.
And then I it's been published several places. It's been anthologized a couple of places, but it was an important story to me. And I did the screenplay a long time ago when we did Mommy, and it was a success. And we sold it to Lifetime. Mommy is this movie I did that basically asked the question, what would have happened if the bad seed had grown up and become a perfect mother, and her little girl slowly realizes that, oh, mom's a sociopath. And I had in mind, if I could get Patty McCormick, the original bad seed, to play it, it would be worth doing it. And we did, and she was great.
That's amazing.
So we sold it to Lifetime, and we got Blockbuster chain in every store, and so it was a hit. And so we have been preparing to do Blue Christmas, and instead we did a sequel because we had to, and we had investors to. And so that went on, just went on the back shelf. Well, cut decades later, I had heart surgery in 2016. I had cancer surgery in 2017. I was feeling like and then I'm still playing rock and roll, and that's just probably I need to put the movie stuff behind me, right? So I got this call to do saying, we'd like you to do a Golden Age radio show live as a play to raise money for the local art center. What do you want it to be about? We thought you'd do Dick Tracy. I'm like, I don't promote things that by people that fired me.
Right. As a rule.
30 years ago. But I said, but I'm the basically the literary executor of the Mickey Spillane estate, and have literary control of Mike Hammer, one of the most famous private detectives in fiction. And I had already done 2 audiobook plays, full length, like 3 hours each, with Stacy Keach as Mike Hammer.
Oh my God, Stacy Keach
full
is
cast.
amazing.
We had done these in Chicago.
That's sick.
We had full cast. We had a lot of Second City people in there. They were
nice.
Really fabulous. Well, one of them, which is called Encore for Murder, I then got a call, and they wanted to know if I could put it on in Owensboro, Kentucky, where they had a mystery convention. And I said, hey, we can do that. And they said, Gary Sandy lives nearby. Now, Gary Sandy from WKRP in Cincinnati had been in my movie Mommy's Day, and we were friends. So that sealed it. He could play Mike Hammer.
Awesome.
Nice.
So we did that there, and then somebody heard about it in Clearwater, Florida, where there's a really fancy theater. We weren't in the main stage theater. We're in the Black Box Theater down there, but it's the Ruth Eckert Theater, and it's in Clearwater, Florida. It's a big deal. We did it there. So I had that play in my pocket. And when they asked me in Muscatine, Iowa, where I live, would you stage a Golden Age radio? I said, yeah, we'll do my camera. Well, can you get Gary Sandy? I said, Gary, you can't afford him. I mean, get Gary. Will you ask him? So, okay. So I called Gary and said, Gary, blah, blah, blah. Would you consider doing it? Sure. What do you need to come? Oh, nothing.
All right.
Hey, yeah, I stopped the negotiation. And he drove up from Kentucky to do it.
Amazing.
I had it set up so that we would be rehearsed, and he would just have to come in for like the last 3 days. So the very first table read, I was like, this is pretty good. I mean, these local actors.
Yeah.
These local actors. And I started asking, and several of them had been in independent films in the area. And so I went home to my wife, Barb, who's very tough. And I said, would you come to the first rehearsal and tell me if I'm just seeing what I want to see? Do I just want this to be good? And she came along and she said, no, they're not bad. They're not bad. It's pretty good. And she said, and you're in your element. And I thought, yeah, I kind of am. And so then I had already set up to be co-director. So Gary comes up, and he came up a little early, scared the hell out of me. I was on stage talking to one of the actors, the Foley guy, actually.
Mhm.
And then I turned around and he was like nose to nose with me. And I'm like, okay. And he's this fun guy. And he was so good as my camera. Anyway, after we had one run through, my friend Phil Dingledine, who we talked about, who lives in the Quad Cities, who shot and edited Mommy and Mommy's Day and Elliot Ness and Real Time and all the stuff that I've done. I said, Phil, what are you doing this weekend? He said, well, I don't have anything. I said, well, could you round up some HD cameras? And I've got a couple of people here who could shoot also. And we could also say, I'd like to grab this. I don't want this to go off into the ether. So we shot 2 dress rehearsals. We shot the one performance. It was just one time. And then I sat down with this guy, Chad Bishop, who had been the Foley guy. And he works at Muscatine Community College in nearby Muscatine, Iowa, where you guys live. And you don't live in Muscatine, you live but we edited it into a 90-minute movie program. And I'm not, I wasn't sure. I still am not sure what I got, because I got this incredible central performance that's very professional. But they're actors carrying scripts, but they're also in costume. And then there's a screen to set the various settings. So it is, so it was kind of it is what it is. And Phil and I have been working on expanding this documentary I did in 1999 called My Camera's Mickey Spillane, because this is the 75th anniversary of My Camera's first appearance. And so I went to the people that were going to bring that out on, on Blu-ray and take it out streaming, and said, can I show you this thing that we did? And the president of the company came back and said, we really like this. What do you want to do with it? Says, make it a bonus feature.
Cool.
That's neat.
So that I don't have
to,
because if I put it out there in the front position, I'm saying but now I'm just saying, hey, here's our documentary. And then I had, for the documentary, interviewed Gary, and I'd interviewed Gary and interviewed a couple of the actors. So there was already some stuff from the from that, and so we're at, this is I don't know when you're going to air this, but on May 5th, 2023, we are showing it at Muscatine Community College and at 7:00 Friday night. And we also have 3 nominations for Iowa Motion Picture Awards.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
I
anyway,
might have to come see that.
It got the juices flowing again. And then I got working with Chad at the at Muscatine Community College. And he had walked me into his theater setup, his black box theater, and I said, Chad, this is a lot like a TV studio. And so I got this idea. I think I could do Blue Christmas here. So then we're into Blue. Now we're doing Blue Christmas.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
And it's low budget. We're talking about $125,000 movie.
Sure.
Movie with quotes. And we're going after a green light grant, which would give us about $50,000, and we'll use a lot of. It will be. I hope it's not Amateur Night at Dixie. I think it's going to be. We'll use a lot of the people that I used in Encore for Murder, and Gary, I think, is going to come back and play Marley.
Nice.
So we'll see what we come up with.
That sounds.
But
great.
I know that a Christmas movie is a good thing to do.
Yeah. Make sure to let Ben and I know if you have auditions. We'd love to be in your movie.
Local actors.
Yeah, we're local actors who've been in movies.
Well, I'm
not to put you on the spot or anything.
Hell yeah, I'll elf it out. I'll be the most bitchin' elf you ever saw.
Put me in some pointy ears.
There's no elf in my world. Go to that crazy Stephen King if you want to do it.
I have the Indiegogo information. That'll be in the show notes. So anybody who wants to donate can
Please
jump on
do.
that and add to the making of your movie.
Well, that would be great. And our perks are like it's an almost perkless offering.
That's the way. That's the smart way to do it. Like, sometimes making an Indiegogo is more work for you than what you get out of it. So it's, I mean,
now, listeners, just give the man the money.
yeah, give the man the money.
Don't worry about
Let's
it.
make a Christmas movie with a detective, man. Like I love the thing that I love about this idea is that the taking that A Christmas Carol formula it's so familiar that it's easily connectable, but it's so open you can do whatever you want with it. Like, you just listed off your 3 ghosts, none of which were any 3 I would have guessed. Like, it's so cool. I love it.
Amazing.
Before we go, I just want to know what's next for you besides this movie. Are you working on anything new? Is there anything you want to share with our listeners?
Well, I'm going in for cardioversion tomorrow to get rid of my AFib.
Oh my goodness.
So send flowers.
Yeah. It's very hard for me. I'm not young. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and literally, the Blue Christmas Project, to some degree, is a toe in the water. Say, okay, can I still do this? And then the next project would be a horror movie that I promise you has nothing to do with Christmas.
I also expect audition notices for that. If that's all right.
Yeah. We can be spooky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's going to happen.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Where can people follow you, find out more about your books, buy some of your books? Here, drop all those plugs.
Well, I love it when old dumb guys say www. Where else would you? But it's maxallancollins.com. It's ALLAN. It's if they're not gonna they don't get Edgar Allan Poe right, they're never gonna get me right. So, but it's Max Allan ALLAN, and I post every week, and my wife and my son censor me because I always go too far, as you have witnessed tonight. And the Amazon has it's awful to hit the evil empire that hard.
Yeah,
sure.
They have a lot of my stuff, and they brought all my Nate Hellers back in print. All the Hellers are in print, and so wherever fine books are sold, Barnes and Noble has been very supportive, and I've seen these books at BAM. So they're around. They're not hard to find, but you gotta want to find them.
Yeah. Max, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
It's been fantastic.
I anticipate we will be having you back in the future to talk
very
more.
Fun.
This has been so much fun. That's it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us for our next episode. For Max Allan Collins and Benjamin Graham, I'm Joshua Kahn, reminding you, I write to know.
Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to our interview with Max. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you check out our show notes to support Max's Indiegogo campaign, to follow him, and to find his work. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.